Hello, everybody. Doing a few videos today. So, one I'm going to do a bit more fun than some of the other more serious political ones. I'm going to talk about Australian cricket and particularly the decision to bring Nathan McSweeney in. Now, I do comment a lot about selections and I go back and look at whether I've got it right or whether I've got it wrong. Now, and I had a look back, and you can look back at my earlier videos. I was complaining about the decision to bring Marcus Harris in as opener, and this was at the end of 2018. And of course, he has been Australia's, well, I believe, the world's least successful opener in Test history. I also complained bitterly about the decision to bring Cameron Bancroft in at the end of 2017, and he has been the also extremely unsuccessful, one of the least successful in history, and for any team. And also, of course, he did the ball tampering that damaged Australian cricket, hurt our reputation, and also hurt David Warner particularly, and also Steve Smith, who are our two best batsmen and captain and vice captain. So, however, I do occasionally get something a little bit wrong. I thought that the decision to bring Tim Payne in was strange because he wasn't even playing first class cricket. He'd effectively retired from first class cricket, then he got brought in as into the side. So just as a reminder and why I said those, and you can go back to my old videos. So 2017, the reason why I thought that Cameron Bancroft was a poor decision was because the only position that was meant to be up for grabs was the wicketkeeper position. Now, Cameron Bancroft was a wicketkeeper, so he was considered for the wicket-keeping role to replace Matthew Wade, who was out of form. The opening spot, then held by Matthew Renshaw, was not up for grabs. Matthew Renshaw was in great form. He was averaging, I think, 36 at Test level, a lot more than what either Cameron Bancroft or Marcus Harris ever managed, and he was in form. And yes, he didn't get huge scores, but they were difficult batting conditions. He was doing well considering the conditions. So that was a mistake because if Cameron Bancroft was going to play in 2017, it should have been as a wicketkeeper. And because he hadn't played at all for, I think it was 18 months before that, he'd been injured, they shouldn't have been rushing him back in just after two first class matches. Also, he wasn't a fringe player. He wasn't even in contention. He was nowhere near Test level. He was nowhere near second 11 or even third 11 level for Australia. I mean, it's Australian second 11 or Australian third 11. He was barely in his stateside and he wasn't in discussion. So to jump up there, yes, he had two great first class matches in a row, but it was too quick. And that was the problem. If you're going to play him as a wicketkeeper. So there were two problems with him. One was that he wasn't in form in any realistic sense. It's just been two good matches. You can have two good matches and that doesn't make you in form. In form means you're having a consistent run of several matches in a row, 6 months, a year, 2 years in a row of good, doing well. He had just had one or two good matches. And this is the thing, like you always have before the outside of the test arena, you have a few players that are not quite there. So right now, and I'll just say, so right now we had our top 11, our front 11 that we had, and we've been quite consistent in Australian cricket. So until the start of this series, so we had Usman Khawaja opening. Steve Smith, I actually felt did well enough as an opener. He averaged, I think it was 32 as an opener, but they were difficult batting conditions. That was fine. Usman Khawaja was not averaging much more, and I think it was quite decent considering the conditions he was under. Steve Smith as number two, well, Marnus Labuschagne as a number three was good, and also, of course, Steve Smith has a wonderful record behind him. We had Cameron Green as our steady number four. We had Travis Head as our five. We had um, Mitchell Marsh as our six. Yes, he had a terrible start to his Test career, given far too many chances, but he actually had started to earn it. We had Alex Carey as our wicketkeeper and number seven, and of course we had the four bowlers. That was our steady 11. Cameron Green became injured. So it was Cameron Green's spot that was up for grabs. Now, the issue is that we should have been looking for not an opener because we had that. Steve Smith was opening. He had committed to try out as an opener. And as far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't have been looking to replace him. So the selectors were forcing Steve Smith to bat at four because they wanted him not to be averaging 32 opening, but to be averaging 65 at number four. Fair enough, they want an extra 30 runs per innings. Fair enough. But the bowlers actually wanted the bowling depth of Cameron Green. Now, Mitchell Marsh was a decent bowler early in his career, but he stopped bowling. He stopped bowling consistently. I always consider him to be a bowling all-rounder. I think Mitchell Marsh, in his heart, is a bowler that bats a bit. But unfortunately, at test level, they forced him to be a batsman that bowled a bit. And that's what he's been doing. He cannot replace Cameron Green when he's not bowling regularly. So you needed to have someone that could bowl well enough, perhaps not quite top level, test level, but decently, and also bat well enough to replace Cameron Green. Now, that person could bat at 6, 7, 8. Doesn't matter. They could even potentially bat behind Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins, as long as they could bowl well enough and also bat decently. So we had people in contention for that role. One of them who has a good test record is Michael Neser. Now, he is a player who, yes, he's more of a bowler than a batsman, but he can bat decently well. I think he averages like 35 at first class level. He's decent. And I wouldn't put him in the top six. I'd bat him at seven or eight. I'd probably put him ahead of Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins. So I'd put him at number eight, or although you'd probably have to move Alex Carey up to six, and then he'd be at seven. And he would fulfill the role of Cameron Green. No, he's not as good, but he's providing a similar service. Now, another one that you had, who's my preference, is Aaron Hardy. Also plays for the same first class team as Cameron Green, and also bowls pace. And he's played one day international and T20 international cricket for Australia. He's done pretty well. His batting hasn't been quite as good as we'd like, but his bowling has been really good. And of course, there is a difference between tests and one days, but the gap between tests and one days is smaller than the gap between tests and first class, because first class you're not generally going up against test quality players. So I would have loved to have seen Aaron Hardy. I think Aaron Hardy could have batted in the top six. Now, if he'd played, you would have probably put Travis Head into four, Mitchell Marsh into five, and you would have had Aaron Hardy at six. I think he could have fulfilled a role. Again, he wouldn't have been as good as Cameron Green, but he's not much worse. His batting's a little bit worse. His bowling probably even a little bit better, I think, from what I've seen. But it's pretty similar. Overall, you'd probably be getting 95% of Cameron Green when you get an Aaron Hardy. Now, Michael Neser, I'd say his bowling is quite a lot better than Cameron Green's, but his batting is quite a lot worse. So you'd be getting a different sort of player. You'd be getting more of a bowler than a batsman, whereas Aaron Hardy's very similar. So, but those two, I think, were the leading contenders, or should have been the leading contenders. Now, you also had Sean Abbott. Now, I think he's much more of a bowler, and his batting is probably not good enough for test level, and he'd probably be batting behind Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins, and so he would be batting at number nine, and you'd then have to have Pat Cummins batting at seven, Mitchell Starc at eight, and it'd weaken the batting so much that I think it'd be dangerous to play him. And his bowling's also not that good, and I'd say probably Michael Neser's bowling's better, plus his batting's better. So if you've got a choice of Sean Abbott versus Michael Neser, you'd always pick Michael Neser at test level. Now, that therefore rules Sean Abbott out of the equation. Now, not that he's a bad player, and in fact, I think he's got a role in T20 international cricket, and because he's such a fast scorer. Um, whether he has a role in one-day internationals, maybe not. But he's sort of been in the conversation. So with that in mind, they would have been the three that you would have been talking about for a like for like. Now, I would have crossed Sean Abbott out because, in all respects, Michael Neser is better, and also Michael Neser has Test experience. I don't think Sean Abbott does from memory. He might have, but anyway. So they would have been. So it would have been Michael Neser or Aaron Hardy for a like for like. Now, if they wanted an opener, now if Steve Smith's not performing, Travis Head has got a good record as an opener. He's actually, and I know he's in form, but he when he has opened for Australia, he's done well. He opens in T20 cricket. He sometimes opens in one day international, and he has opened in Test, and he's done well. Similar to Usman Khawaja early in his career, he was normally batting at 3 and 4, or sometimes 5 and 6. But when he opened, he did well. He didn't want to open. He still doesn't want to open. So I thought Travis Head was a good option to open, but he doesn't want to. He's in such great form, they don't want to ruin that form. But I think it should be a choice because I think with someone like Travis Head, the form he's in, you don't want to say to him, "We're forcing you to open," because when you're forcing someone to open, that's sort of like what they did to Justin Langer or later on Shane Watson and Usman Khawaja. It's sort of saying, "You're not good enough to play in your preferred position. We're going to force you into a position you don't want." And they do it the other way around as well. Openers forced to bat in the middle order, such as with Michael Hussey. He was an opener. He preferred to be an opener. He had to bat at 6 for Australia because there was no opening slots. It seems to be more often that we struggle to find openers. But so that anyway, those were the two middle order players. Now, if we decided that we needed to have a specialist opener, then we have to consider who are the best openers in the country. Now, again, Cameron Bancroft and Marcus Harris have such terrible test records. They must be considered to be players that cannot handle test cricket. And I have to say, for that reason, they're off the table. Now, that leaves us with two openers that we can consider. Now, those two would be Matthew Renshaw, who still had a great test record. I'm sorry. Still, you look at it, it's much better than Bancroft um, and Harris. He's not that old, and he's doing well. He's in form. Okay, he bats down the order sometimes, but he is an experienced opener, and I think with a really quite a good test record. So Matthew Renshaw's one to consider, and the other one would be the inexperienced Sam Constas. Now, Sam Constas, when he went to the Australia A Games, there were he was averaging I think 52. Now he got 2 centuries in the same match, a similar sort of situation as Cameron Bancroft a few years ago, and they sensibly gave him a couple of Australia A Games. Now the Australia A Games were very poor batting pitches, they were good for bowling, and there were low scores. Now they had a four-player bat-off, and I don't mind them having a four-player bat-off, but what they should have had was two specialist openers opening. Now, those two should have been Matthew Renshaw and Sam Constas. Now, Matthew Renshaw was not out of the four. They didn't play him. They just decided you're not in a second 11. I'm like, why not? He should be. He should have been in the second 11. Sam Constas, I thought, he's come from out of obscurity. He should have been. It was reasonable to put him in. I mean, you get a good record like that, you put him in. Now, the two who should have batted at 3 and 4, who would have been the ones if we decided to put Steve Smith in, should have been Aaron Hardy and Michael Neeson. Now you might think that's too high for Michael Neeson. Tough, tough luck. You're putting him in, and look, maybe you don't put him at 3 or 4. Maybe put him further down the order. And if you want to try Nathan McSweeney and you want to try Bo Webster, put them in 3 and 4. Maybe you should have had Michael Webster and sorry, Bo Webster and Nathan McSweeney at 3 and 4. Have what's his name's Aaron Hardy and Michael Neeser at 5 and 6, and maybe they should have done that. Now the problem is Nathan McSweeney was not a fringe player. He was not being talked about as the next in line. There's no discussion. Now I know some people have pulled out some statistics and says, oh, you know, blah, 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 he scored a few runs. Good for him. He scored a few runs. So consider putting him into that second lot. But this is a hole that we have, a Cameron Green-sized hole. Nathan McSweeney cannot provide the Cameron Green-shaped hole. He just can't. He's a different kind of player. And he's a number 4, and he doesn't bowl. If he was a number 4 and he bowled, well, okay, he bowls a little bit. But if he was a number 4 that bowled, and bowled to the level of Cameron Green and was a fast bowler and that sort of quality, okay, we can consider him. He doesn't. No consideration. He should not have been in discussion, nor should Bo Webster. Put them in the Australian A side. I don't mind that. Put them in there. But don't have them in contention. The four-way bat-off should have been Matthew Renshaw, Sam Constas, Aaron Hardy, and Michael Neeser. Now, Michael Neeser did play one of the Australia A games, did really well. Nobody even considered him. He's not filling the role. right hole. He actually does provide a decent replacement for Cameron Green. Sure, he's more bowler heavy, but he's not that bad a batsman. And he's a very good bowler. So I think that would have, and in the pitches that we ended up having at Perth and at Adelaide, I think Michael Neser could have been great. I mean, got to consider. So let's say that, and here's the situation. Let's imagine all four of those players in the side instead of Nathan McSweeney. So we know what Nathan McSweeney did. He got 10 and it was an awful 10. And then he got 0 and then he got 39. And I think he got 10 not out. I forgot about the 10 not out. 10 not out. I mean, we were chasing 19. Who cares? Anyone could have got that. That's the easiest of easy runs. The 10 was hard runs and he completely stuffed it up. So he got two fours that were off edges and he should have been out. Should have been out twice before he got his 10. When he got his 39, yeah, he was actually, I think he was dropped three times, but it was a decent knock, but there wasn't, I mean, Australia was ahead of the game. It was, I mean, we'd worked out how to play with him. Um, I don't consider it that great, but it was certainly better than the other two. And of course, the 10 not out we can pretty much ignore because it was chasing 19. Who cares? So let's now consider what, based on what we know of them, what the other four would have done. So the first one I'm going to consider is Matthew Renshaw. So Matthew Renshaw opening the innings, he knows how to bat in tough conditions. When he was playing for Australia, he had a lot of matches in hard batting conditions, and he did really well. And what I'd imagine him doing when he's an experienced head, he'd be batting with Usman Khawaja against Jasprit Bumrah, and I think there would have been a lot of confidence with him. Now he might have only got 15 or 20, but I think the difference would have been that Usman Khawaja would have had a lot more confidence, wouldn't have been so fearful of him, and would have batted around that and scored a bit more himself. You probably wouldn't have seen quite as big a fall from Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith, and you probably would have got around 50 more runs from them. Now, you might think, well, we lost by more than that, but we could have got a lead in the first innings. And then instead of, because I mean, we had the situation in Perth where India batting first had a lead. Now, if difference between them having a 44-run lead and us having a 20-run lead is that if we had a 20-run lead and they're batting second, they're not just going to score with freedom and have easy runs and get whatever they want. You had Kohli out of form. You had Jaiswal who ended up with 140 or something. Yeah, he's in form, but he didn't know what to do against Australia's bowlers, and suddenly he did well. And it was just that one innings. And so you take that aside, and I think you would have found that Australia would have been chasing around 250, and much different scenario to what we had. And that's the difference between Matthew Renshaw playing in the first test. What would he have done in the second test? I think more of the same. We won the second test. I think we might have won it a bit more easily. And so definitely a better player to play. I think, sure, we still might have lost the first test, but it would have been a lot closer. I think. Now, so that's that option. Now, the Sam Constance one, I think, was a riskier one because he would have either done really well or really badly. Now, he might have got two ducks, we might have lost just as badly. And then I think, quite rightly, we would have dumped him after one test, and we should have. And yeah, if he'd got two ducks, let's say he could have got done just as badly as Nathan McSweeney did, and could have done worse. Although 10 and 0 is not much worse you can go. We could have got 0 and 0. And I think then that he would have been ducked. So, and then, he's 18 years old, I think, and he'd come back a few years down the track and he's learned from that experience. He comes back and he does well. So the Sam Constance one would be risky because you'd have that chance of getting 0 and 0. But he could have got 50 and 30. And he could have been match winning. So I think you roll the dice with him, there is a chance that he'll win you the match in the first test compared to us losing. And the difference between a loss, and it was a big loss, and a win. And look, I'm not saying he'd win every day, but because most likely he would have done just as badly as Nathan McSweeney. So he'd either do as badly as Nathan McSweeney, but he learns from that experience, builds on that. Dumped after one test, you bring back in Matthew Renshaw, or you bring in one of the all-rounders. Or he wins you the match. It's perhaps not quite 50-50. I think it's more likely he's going to fail. But you bring that in, it's a good option. Now let's look at Michael Neser and Aaron Hardy. Now, Michael Neser, I think, and I think he would have been batting at 7. So you would have been having a bowler heavy lineup. And I can't imagine him getting, he might have got 10 and 0. There's a chance, same as what Nathan McSweeney is. But he would have been bowling better. And he would have had that fifth bowling option, and it would have been a solid fifth bowling option. You wouldn't have had Mitchell Stark injuring himself, and you would have had India. Yeah, they got 150. Maybe they would have got less than that, because there was every chance they were going to get out for 80. But then we just sort of lost control. We missed that fifth bowling option. They're out for 80. We get 104. We're leading by 24. And then the second innings, instead of being tired, we would have had Michael Neser to turn to. So again, I'm seeing a decent chance that we would have actually come back and won. So there's a decent chance with Michael Neser that we would have won that first test. Um, you can't guarantee it. You can't go back in time and guarantee. But there's a decent chance. Now, we would have gone, oh, okay, we've got an extra bowler. It's a bit of a different feel. But it wouldn't be much of a different feel. You would have had Steve Smith opening. And maybe he would have appreciated the confidence and done a lot better. I mean, don't forget Steve Smith also failed. And maybe he wouldn't have. Maybe he would have got a 50. Maybe he would have got 30. I think with Michael Neser in the team, the chances are that we would have won the first test. And now let's look at Aaron Hardy. And Aaron Hardy, very, very similar to Cameron Green. And he's got that international exposure now. So he would have been batting at six for me. So you wouldn't have had much of a change for the lineup compared to still have Steve Smith opening. Just would have had, instead of Cameron Green at four, would have had Cameron Green at six, and you would have shuffled Travis Head up from five to four, Mitchell Marsh up from six to five. Wouldn't have made that much of a difference. Um, and I think you would have had Hardy at six. So Hardy at six, do I expect him to get a lot of runs? Probably not. His bowling probably wouldn't have been as solid as Michael Neser's. He would have been a bit nervous because he hasn't played Test before. And having to play the role of the top six batsman might be a bit strange to him. So, under the circumstances, I think that he probably would have. Well, he's been scoring about 15 or 20 in most of his one-day international and T20 matches. Probably would have got a similar score. Would have been easy to bat because, of course, we know that by the time we got to there, we had Travis Head in form, getting us back into the match, and he would have capitalised on that and got 50 or 60 runs. And that could have been really match winning. Again, I'm seeing a decent chances of winning. Now, he wouldn't have been as strong a bowler as Michael Neser. So when you get that second innings fight back from India, which would have had to have been a fight back because Australia would have had a first innings lead, um, it would have been useful to have his extra bowling option. And it wouldn't have been a powerful one. He wouldn't have been taking 3 or 4 wickets, but he might have taken one or two, and you would have Mitchell Marsh would have been there. So again, I'm looking at these. I'm looking at Michael Neser, we probably would have won. Aaron Hardy, we definitely would have won. Matthew Renshaw, we probably would have won. And Sam Constas, we might have won. So the best option out of them was probably Aaron Hardy. Second best was Michael Neser. Third best was Sam Constas. And the worst of them, well, sorry, third best was probably Matthew Renshaw. And then the worst of those four was probably Sam Constas. Now, all of those options were better than the Nathan McSweeney one. And the problem with Nathan McSweeney is, number one, he is not an opener. Number two, Steve Smith didn't want to stop being an opener. He liked opening, and he did well as an opener. And number three, Nathan McSweeney was not in the conversation as someone just outside of the test level. There were those other players that were there. Sam Constas wasn't either. But in the lead up to the match, Sam Constas did so well that he was starting to be talked about. No one had been talking about Nathan McSweeney in that way. So to pluck someone from obscurity, say you're going to have to open, and all of this other stuff, it's a recipe for disaster. It's unlikely to work. And when you have this, it's what you have to call a hunch. And when you have a hunch, you play one test. He's not a genuine pick. He's a hunch. Now it's okay to put a hunch in, and I said that with Cameron Bancroft. I said that with Marcus Harris. They were hunches, but they were hunches that were given 12 tests and 10 tests. What the heck are you doing? Hunches get one test. A genuine pick gets 10 tests. Someone who's averaging 50, I mean, like Phil Hughes or Steve Smith or David Warner, even when he got his test debut, they deserve extended shots. Not someone like Nathan McSweeney who failed in his first few seasons. And yes, he done better in his last one or two, but he's not that level. And yes, he might become that level one day. He might well become a genuine number 4 or 5 for Australia, or number 6. I think more likely a number 6. But he's not there at the moment. And if he was going to play for Australia, he should be playing at 5 or 6. But there's currently no vacancy for that. So the player that Nathan McSweeney should have been considered to replace if they lost him would be, for example, Travis Head. Let's say that Travis Head got injured or became sick, then Nathan McSweeney can step up. Bo Webster similarly, they're middle order, late order players who are probably not going to bowl very much because their bowling quality is not really test level, not that I'm aware of. Um, Now, and we haven't seen Nathan McSweeney bowl even a single ball. So I think that that's not very genuine. Nathan McSweeney shouldn't be in there. Now, Webster was put into the squad and hasn't played. That's the right move. If Nathan McSweeney had been put in the squad and not played, that would have been the right move. They could have put him there as a reserve in case Travis Head got injured. And even in case Mitchell Marsh got injured, because Mitchell Marsh hasn't been bowling lately. So even though Mitchell Marsh can bowl, he's not bowling lately. Could have been a decent cover. Problem is when you have one type of player and then you replace them with a completely different type of player that doesn't fill that role, then you don't fill that gap that you've got. So the gap from Cameron Bancroft is not a number 4. It's a number 4 that bowled. And in fact, I could even say a middle order player that bowled, middle order batsman that bowled pace. And if you replace him with an opener who doesn't bowl pace, and in fact he's not even a regular opener, you're just asking for trouble. So no offense on Nathan McSweeney, but Nathan McSweeney is a Travis Head sort of player. You wouldn't have Travis Head. Well, I mean, he can open, but yeah. So replacing the wrong player, and this is the problem. Now Nathan McSweeney might turn around and get a century in match-winning innings in this match. That does not make it the right decision. It's because it was the wrong selection. For all these people, and I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, he's a great player, he's done so well, blah 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 blah. Give him a chance, stop having a go at our own cricketers, blah 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 blah." Did we learn nothing from the selection of Marcus Harris? Did we learn nothing from the selection of Cameron Bancroft? Are we not learning? Every other team in the world, when somebody fails, they drop them. But we give them an extended run even when they're an absolute hunch. They play that hunch, they get one test. It's gone. But we just like to have that security. We like to give them job security. So, oh, you're selected, you're going to get 10 tests. Don't worry. No worries. Oh, who cares if series are on the line? Well, we're giving you confidence. We're giving you job security. And I think it's a mistake. Oh, talking too long. Anyway, I'm talking too long. My voice is starting to give out. But yeah, so I'm not having any go at the guy. I'm sure he's a lovely man. But Nathan McSweeney is not yet test level. Maybe he will be test level in a few years. I don't know. But and look, I'm sure it's good experience for him to be given this shot. Whether it helps him in 3 or 4 years, and whether he becomes test level in 3 or 4 years, or if this just hurts him and he never plays test again, I don't know. Um, but it's not good for Australian cricket to be playing people like him, and we just keep doing it. And we had a steady 11. I want Steve Smith back as opening. Anyway, it's so sad that Steve Smith wanted to open, and they said, "No, you're not allowed to." Oh, you did all right, but not well enough for us. So we're putting you back at number 4. Bad luck. Such an insult. He's probably the best batsman we've had since Don Bradman, and I mean we're really lacking good batsmen at the moment. So they won't let him do what he wants to do. I mean, that's the thing. If he was forced to open, and then now he doesn't have to, fair enough. But yeah, and I wouldn't have even minded having Aaron Hardy open. I mean, I don't know if he could do it, but Oh, you wouldn't have Michael Neeson open, but yeah, it's yeah, we really dropped the ball on this one, and look, wish I could be wrong, but yeah, the amount of times I've been wrong in this is not very many, and you can check my records. Don't think I'm wrong on this one. Anyway, bye bye now.